Hey guys, I finally done it. I got the final part I needed for this video, which means we can actually get the build started that I've been teasing you guys about for a little while now. Quick note, I'll be making a build guide next week on how to build this specific gaming PC, so let's get started on the story behind the parts and give you guys some benchmarks. Alright, so I decided to give myself a $200 budget, so for the CPU, I decided to go with a Ryzen 3 1200 that I got for around $41 on AliExpress. Usually the CPU goes for about $44, but if you first sign up on AliExpress, you get a $3 discount on any item on the website. So I actually did a video on this a couple of months ago that you can check out at the top right of your screen. And the CPU took a little while to get here because it was shipped from China, but it actually did come a little bit faster than I expected it to. As you guys know, the CPU doesn't come with a cooler, so I'm going to need one of those. So if you guys remember from my first PC build on the channel, I actually had a water cooler on my Ryzen 3 2600, so I didn't use the cooler, so I just had that in somewhere in my closet, so it doesn't really add for the cost. The total cost right now is $41. The RAM we chose was a 2x4GB of VisionTek DDR4 2400 MHz RAM, which I'm gonna have to overclock because Ryzen loves faster memory, but I'm not sure how high of overclock we could get because of the rare heatsink. I won this RAM on a bid for $15.89 and got it here a couple of days later, so I know it worked because I put it in my main PC and everything checked out. I was able to overclock it, so yeah, we could get a max overclock of 2666 on this RAM. Speaking of overclocking, I needed a motherboard that I could overclock with. So you guys remember my first PC build that I just referred to? I had a B350 motherboard on a 2nd gen processor, which didn't work. And I didn't know that that was specifically the issue. It also could have been maybe me being stupid and I shorted something out while installing it into the case. But just for safekeeping, I tossed it in a motherboard box and put it back in my closet. It's been in there for a while now. I took it out. This is the MSI B350M Pro VDH motherboard. It's a micro ATX motherboard that's overclockable, has like 8 USB ports. Now, I got this in July of last year, so I bought it a while ago. I got it for $75, but that's not really reasonable considering you can get a B450 motherboard on Amazon for around $65. I saw this specific motherboard for $59.99 on eBay, so that's technically what I'm going to go with right now. The storage I went with was a 1TB 7200 RPM Seagate Barracuda hard drive that I got from my aunt for free. Her computer was finally giving up after about 8 years, and she said I could salvage anything of value, so I took that. Okay, so cases, there were no actually good used deals on cases really around my area or on eBay or anything, so I bought new. The case I went with was the Compute Case Hex HX300 that cost me $29.99 on eBay. The case actually had a dent on the side where you put the GPU in, but I kind of like punched it a little bit and like kind of got the dent out. That way it could be installed correctly. It's an ATX case, which kind of annoyed me because it's a micro ATX board, which really is like a big pet peeve of mine. But eventually I'll get over that, so we'll be fine. The power supply was this fanless 400 watt power supply from a company called Nofin. Now, I'd say you should never cheap out on a power supply, mostly because they're probably old Dell units that are probably trash. But I did see that this was 80 plus bronze, and if you have an 80 plus power supply, you could most likely use it for like future builds if you're gonna resalvage it. So I sent in an offer for 15 bucks, and it got here about a week later. Finally, the graphics card. Now, at this point, I was hitting pretty close to the budget. I had about like 40 bucks to spend. So, at first I bought an R9 270 for about 44 bucks, but the guy never ended up shipping it, so I requested a refund, and after like 2 weeks, I actually got the refund. So I saw this R7 260 for 39 bucks, and it got here next day. Oh, and the final thing I added was this $5 little LED strip on eBay, which I didn't realize it, but they gave me a 5-meter long one, so I have a lot extra on me now. So this totals to $205.85. If you want to cut costs a little bit, you really didn't need the $5 LED strip, but I just had it lying around, so I used it. Now that I have this all said and done, we can get into benchmarks. And overclocking, now I got the CPU to 3.6 gigahertz on the stock cooler, which surprised me a little bit. I didn't think I'd get more than like 3.4, 3.5. I tried 3.7, but it was not stable then. So I went ahead and tried overclocking the RAM. The best I could get it to was 2666, otherwise the computer would just freeze up and I couldn't do anything on it. Also, I got the GPU to 1100 megahertz and I think 1600 megahertz in RAM. Now, I benchmarked a few games such as Minecraft, Fortnite, Apex, and CSGO. I also got Cinebench R20 for the CPU benchmark. So, in Cinebench, no overclocking, we got 1164 Cinebench points, and once I overclocked everything, we got 1354 Cinebench. For reference, my Ryzen 5 2600 at 4.1 gigahertz with RAM overclocked to 3000 megahertz, I got a score of 3004 Cinebench. So it's maybe like 1/4ish, 1/5ish the performance. Now on to gaming benchmarks. In Minecraft on 1080p max no overclocking, we got a minimum of 160 FPS, an average of 332 FPS, and a max of 751 FPS. Now the 751 is probably looking at the sky or looking down because it doesn't force you to load in a lot more terrain, so you wouldn't like commonly get 751. But anyways, after overclocking, I got a minimum of 200 FPS, average of 354 FPS, and a high of 794 FPS. So I'd probably play this in like 1440p or 4K on this computer, but I don't think the GPU can let out above 1080p, so just try getting a high refresh rate monitor if you're thinking about building this for Minecraft. CSGO 1080p max settings gave us a minimum of 98 FPS, an average of 127, and a high of 203 FPS. Now, after retesting with an overclock, we got a minimum of 94 FPS, an average of 141 FPS, and a high of 214 FPS. So that was a good increase in light gaming. Onto Fortnite. In Fortnite 1080p medium settings, we got a minimum of 52 FPS, an average of 68 FPS, and a high of 82 FPS. After overclocking, the minimum went up to a 66 FPS, so we're completely above the 60 FPS hit, even when skydiving. An average of 90 and a high of 121. So it'll run 1080p good in Fortnite. The game that ran the worst was Apex. In Apex on 1080p medium settings, we got a minimum of 46 FPS, but that was mostly just in populated areas. It was in like 50 when skydiving. An average of 69 FPS and a high of 102. After overclock, it got a little bit better though. We got a minimum of 51 FPS, a average of 74, and a high of 104 FPS. So gaming did really good in 1080p, and I'd definitely use this if it were like a starter system that I got. So in conclusion, this computer is great for the money, and the only thing I don't like about it was the case. The standoffs didn't screw in most of the time, meaning that the motherboard isn't completely screwed in. There's about like 2 or 3 screws missing. If you had maybe an extra $15, I'd buy an 120 gigabyte M.2 on eBay for a little under $15. And it'd be a lot faster for the boot drive, because booting this thing up, it takes like over a minute for the computer to get into Windows. But I'm proud of this build, even with the challenges of the case and the standoffs. And I was even able to grab a little bit of RGB to go along with the MSI Mystic Light on the motherboard. So if you guys enjoyed the video, go ahead and be sure to like and share the video. Subscribe if you haven't already for weekly videos, where next week I'm going to be doing a full build guide. So stay tuned, and I'll see you all next one. Bye.